This is our last video about the rise and spread of Islam. Last video we talked about the rise and fall of the Abbasid Empire. After the Abbasids fell, more Islamic empires took their place. From their base in North Africa, a group of Shia, claiming to have descended from Muhammad's daughter and her husband, Ali, believed that they were the true divinely appointed leaders of the Muslim community, not the Abbasids. The Fatimids conquered Egypt in 969, where they founded the city of Cairo, just north of Fustat, the garrison city founded by Muslims in 640. By the 11th century, the Fatimids had conquered all North Africa, Syria, along with Jerusalem, and northwestern Arabia, called the Hejaz, including Mecca and Medina. And they also established Cairo as an important stop on the lucrative trade routes from India to the Mediterranean, making the city one of the most prosperous in the Muslim world. With the wealth acquired through trade, the Fatimids erected a great mosque, many great mosques, libraries, and universities, sponsored research in astronomy and optic sciences, and supported artists, poets, and scholars. It is said that work of one of the principal Muslim physicists on the line of the time even influenced the European intellectual Roger Bacon, and they influenced Johannes Kepler and Leonardo da Vinci. Al-Azhar University, built in 970, is still considered the foremost Islamic higher learning institution, as well as the world's first university. Despite their successes, the Fatimids faced much opposition from the Sunni Muslims and other Shia groups, especially when some of the Fatimid caliphs declared themselves to be the earthly incarnation of God. The empire deteriorated after the loss of Syria to the Crusaders and the invasion of the Seljuk Turks. After the death of the last caliph in 1169, a Sunni general by the name of Saladin took the title of Sultan, forming a Sunni Ayyubid dynasty. In the early 11th century, a group of Turks descended from a tribal chief named Seljuk in Central Asia, developed into a formidable fighting force. The Seljuk Turks conquered many places in Persia and displaced the Buyids and established their capital in Isfahan. With Persia conquered, the Seljuk Turks advanced to Baghdad, taking over the city in 1055. Like the Buyids before them, the Seljuk Turks acknowledged the religious authority of the Abbasid caliphs and assumed temporal power as sultans. The Seljuk Turks took Georgia and much of Asia, while a contingent group of Turks known as the Lesser Seljuks conducted a series of raids in Armenia and eastern Anatolia, the main recruiting ground for the Byzantine armies. The Lesser Seljuks were so successful in their battles that the central regime was dispatched to rein them in. Instead, they were all met by the Byzantine army at Manzikert in the area of present-day Armenia in 1071. So let's look at this significant battle. The Battle of Manzikert. In response to the seizure of a Byzantine fortress by the Seljuk Turks in 1068, the Byzantine emperor led an expedition against the Turks in the eastern Anatolian city of Manzikert. As the Byzantines moved closer to the city, the Seljuk Turks' army bombarded them with arrows, forcing the Byzantines to retreat. However, a treacherous misunderstanding caused the Byzantines to turn directly toward Turkish fighters. As a result, the Byzantines were attacked and their emperor taken prisoner. Psychologically, the defeat ruptured the image of Byzantine's invincibility, inspiring further conquests by the Seljuks. Within decades, the Turks had overtaken almost all of present day Turkey. To Western Europe, this demonstrated that the Byzantines could not be relied upon to act as a buffer between Muslim and Christian worlds, nor protect pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem and the Holy Land. The damage to Byzantium's status was one of the root causes of the later Crusades. Although the Byzantine Empire lasted a few more centuries until the fall of Constantinople in 1453, it never recovered from the loss to the Turks and continued to decline from then on. By the end of the 10th century, the Muslim world was split into three realms, with the respective ruler of each claiming to be the true caliph. In the west, the Umayyads of Cordoba had declared autonomy from the Baghdad Caliphate after 1031 and had broken into a number of independent states. Northern Africa was in the hands of the Shia Fatimids, and in the east, a truncated Abbasid empire had fallen under the administration of the Buyids and then the Seljuk Turks, who eventually wrested the Levant from the Fatimids. Muslim lands were more vulnerable to external attack due to the fragmentation of the Abbasid Empire into numerous smaller states. And boy, were they attacked. Here come the Crusaders. In Europe, the population was restive, and the heads of the Christian Church, having split into Eastern Orthodox Byzantine Empire and Western Roman Catholic Church, were competing over claims to authority over Christian communities. The divide became even more prominent at the beginning of the 11th century, when the Byzantine emperor asked for help from the Pope of the Western Catholic Church to help repel the Muslim Seljuk Turks amassing on the border. Hoping to assert the power of the Catholic Church in the Near East, redirect local hostilities toward an external enemy, the Muslims, or Saracens, as Europeans called them, and riding on a wave of growing religious fervor, the Pope called on his subjects to reclaim the Holy Land, the Levant, from the Muslim infidels. In 1095, the First Crusade set out on a march to Jerusalem, killing thousands of Jews, which Crusaders called the infidels at home, along the way. When these European zealots entered Jerusalem 4 years later, they set upon the city's inhabitants, slaughtering nearly all of the city's Jewish and Muslim populations. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which had been destroyed by the Fatimid Caliph in 1009, was rebuilt beyond its original splendor, and camps of crusaders were set up around Jerusalem. The noble sanctuary, the site of the Temple of Solomon in the Dome of the Rock, was occupied by a group of monastic knights calling themselves the Templars. The word temple comes from Templars, whose duty it was to protect Christian pilgrims and serve as the military arm of the Crusaders. For nearly a century, Western culture in the French language replaced Muslim culture in the Arabic language, and military settlements and Christian churches replaced mosques and Jewish temples. The Muslim Empire never regained the glory it experienced from the time of the Abbasid Empire, although for a brief time the Muslim community in the East was united under the Mongols from 1258 to 1368. And in the West, they were united under the Ottoman Empire from 1299 to 1918, the longest empire in human history. It couldn't compete with the increasingly powerful nations of Europe, however, and in World War One ended the Ottoman Empire. So after World War One, the Europeans took over the region and took it upon themselves to divide up what has become the modern Middle East. Islam as a religion thrives in the modern world. Followers live in regions as diverse as South, East, Central, and Western Asia. North Africa is heavily Muslim. Europe has a large Muslim community, and the United States has Muslims here too, as well as South America. And that's the end.